strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. Kind of a different show today, but when you really think about it, it's not, because being superhuman means being well-rounded, and a lot of aspects of your life go into being superhuman. One of those things is earning money, being gainfully employed, which is problematic today. And we're going to talk about this period in time because I've learned, I'm 62 years old now, I've learned that there are always people who do well in hard times. And maybe if we pay attention to some of this stuff, we can actually be one of those people. Before we get started, I have to thank my title sponsor, Legendary Foods, makers of the Tasty Pastry, which is basically a Pop-Tart remodeled to have 9 grams of protein and less than 1 gram of sugar. But they also have the most delicious nut butters in the world. You'll think you're cheating, but you're not, in the words of Elisa Profumo. If you go to eatlegendary.com, use the code SHR and receive 10% off your entire order. Check them out, show them some love, because they really do contribute in a way that makes this show possible. And so show them some love. Okay, bring my guest on today. My guest is actually no stranger. She's actually a fellow superhuman. Her name is August Cohen. How are you, August?
Fine, Carl. How are you?
Good. And we have known you for a long time, Elisa and I. We communicate. And actually, what really made me want to do this interview with you is because I've known people that you've actually helped.
Yeah.
So first of all, you are not a headhunter, right?
No. No.
So what would you call yourself?
Career coach. The career coach, that I do career services. So that would entail resumes, LinkedIn profiles, interview coaching, job search strategy, tactics, crisis management at work, that kind of stuff.
And I happen to know, I was sitting next to my son, Chase, who you have helped. I gave him your information. He worked directly with you. And because of the changes, the subtle changes, the little things that you can't believe, he got a call yesterday from a headhunter.
Yeah.
And the job offer was unbelievable. And when he hung up, I said, how did you find that guy? And he says, no, he found me. He said, what August has done for me is actually put me on people's radar.
Right.
And that's got to be way better than hunting for a job when people come to you and say, hey, there's a job that I think you should have.
Absolutely. That's the ideal. I want my clients to be in a position to say no, that they have enough opportunities coming to them. Now, and we're going to talk a little bit about this, sometimes you got to put the effort into it, whether it's the effort like he did of hiring someone that's going to, help take things to the next level, or if you're going to do it yourself, there's definitely some effort into it. And that sort of separates those superhumans from those that are not, the ones that are go out there, put the effort, expend the resources, and, do what they need to do.
Right. So, am I wrong that there are people right now that are actually perhaps embarking on their best life ever during all this chaos? I mean, we are supposedly going to be at 20% unemployment, and which is I don't think people understand what that number means, but everybody is freaked out. There are a lot of people whose jobs have literally just disappeared. They have no chance of going back to them.
Right. Yeah, there's a huge disruption in the market, which makes it different than that 2008, 2011 time period. I actually started my business in January of 2008, so I'm familiar with these down markets. And that one, besides real estate and banking, it was sort of like a universal crunch, in all sectors. But this one, there are businesses that are going away forever. That they'll never come back, but there's always a disruption. Opportunities will arise out of this, particularly, in technology, in that space. And So definitely, there's a disruption and there's going to be some new opportunities. And sometimes you got to sort of wait it out a little bit, because it's still sort of settling down. They had the initial sort of disruption. And I had a lot of clients get hired during that period because, fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of companies were cleaning house, because I work with a lot of these C-levels and they're saying, this is the opportunity. We're definitely being careful of who we let go and who we keep. And then there was a lot of opportunities. So I initially had some, and now it's calmed down a little bit as it's going through that second phase of figuring out, what the market's going to do, what's going to be sticky, what's the government going to do. So, but there is definitely going to be some opportunities, but it's going to look real different. And I don't know that anybody 100% knows what that difference is, besides, further exploiting technology, and how we go about work and how we do things more efficient.
So companies are actually taking advantage of COVID-19, and what they're doing is they're blaming COVID-19 for forcing them to change their compensation packages, but they're going to keep it that way after COVID-19 is over. So there are lots of companies who are actually going, wow, we can actually use this to our advantage and tighten up our ship.
Yeah. Well, there's two thoughts about that. One, it's not totally illegitimate that I think, many of the clients I talk to, they would rather be employed than unemployed if a company really does need to cut back instead of close down. If that will allow them to stay in business. But you're right, maybe they will try to do that. And I went through this the last time. But as soon as the market picks up, they're going to lose those people, because there's going to be other companies that are like, we're ready to pay. We want to grow. That's very
Right.
short-sighted for a company. Now, I definitely think there is a place, and I can understand, wow, if our profits are down 50% and we need to cut salary 20%, that's a life-saving strategy for a while. But if they think they're going to be able to extend that when the market comes around, it won't work. It didn't work the last time because somebody will be picking your employees off, or they're going to be looking. So
Is now the time for people to consider changing careers, or is now the time for people to look at their current career path and think, how can I make a big jump right now and take advantage of what's going on?
Well, I'll give the simple answer and then I'll give the complex answer, because I know the superhuman audience, are complex thinker. But simply, good times, bad times, the fastest way to another job at the best salary that you can get, what the market will bear, is being as closely aligned to what you're already doing. So that's your biggest strength. That's the value you have. That being said, sometimes you have to think outside the box, because if your industry is sort of like going away, you might have to think about going to another industry. You don't have a choice, if it's not there anymore. You also have to think about how much savings you have. I coach, like entrepreneurs or people that want to start their own business, and they got like a month of savings. It's like, how long is it going to take you to ramp up? So you have to look at your financial situation. I have some clients that have gotten very attractive severance packages, that will last for a year or so, and they're in a better position to go and do something different. But you have to look at what your industry is, how viable it is, what your skill set is, and how much money you have to take a chance to start something new, especially if you may take a drop. Now, if it's with a company that already provides you a salary, well, great, but you have to understand you're going to have a lot of competition with great talent for that job, and the company is going to want the best value for the buck, and that's going to be usually somebody that's already done it. One of the most flexible is salespeople, that they can if you're a superstar salesperson, they rather have that, and they'll teach you the product. So there's not an easy answer to it, but if your job is still stable, or your industry is still stable, but you want to make more money, you can jump, closely aligned. Or if you have the resources, to be able to withstand a little bit of time to take a chance. But so that's, probably the short answer and the complex answer. Now, I do have some clients, that have had some other really interesting opportunities, but it's usually with a piece of something that they've already done. It's usually not totally like, I've never done this before, it's my passion, but I have no experience in it. That's going to be a little bit harder. But I've had people sort of what I call the next best thing. So maybe they have their primary skill set that maybe the market doesn't even have a use for anymore, but their secondary skill set or what they could parallel over with, they could switch. And usually that's activity, to be able to usurp somebody that's already in the field. If you're sort of close to it, but not exact, if you work harder, work smarter, work longer, you're going to usurp the person that, is doing nothing. So
Jeff Clifton says, I would think health coaches, personal trainers, and naturopathic doctors will have more opportunities. You would think that, but that depends on the marketplace seeing the value. I don't think that people, coming out of COVID, I really thought people were going to say, wow, I better get in shape. So next time this happens,
Yeah.
I'm not the comorbid guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't think that's, do you see that happening? Do you see that?
No, I don't see that happening. And I have a lot of friends, we're in this sort of space together that are really struggling with that. Now, if somebody is, has the resources and their job isn't affected, yeah, they're, investing in their health coach or personal trainer. But, now everything is virtual. So that was a problem too, because it was sort of virtual and it wasn't as appealing, but I've had some that try to, go online and do group classes. And, it was really, really hard to get off the ground. But I find, like you, people are just not grasping that their health is so important now, that they could be, they don't have to be a statistic if they could follow a better health path. And we see that. I mean, the media doesn't support it, what they're promoting. Even when they go out there and they say that 2/3 of the people that die are obese or 99% have comorbidities, their solution is just to hide away in the house.
Yeah, I know. And the other thing is, you're punished if you even say like I can say it because I used to be 330 pounds. I had a heart problem. I had all these things, right? So when I say it, I always joke and say, look, I'm a card carrying fat person. So I'm going to, I can talk about this, but the reality is even I can't really talk about it the way I want to because someone will be offended. And we have to get past this not being able to talk about real issues because someone will be offended. That's a real big problem.
I know, and that's the beauty of us finding our own tribe. When we aren't getting that support in the bigger community, we try to find our tribe. Now, of course, there's a whole nother conversation about how Facebook and Twitter and all these things are trying to clamp down the message, feed. So again, you have to put that extra effort in because we don't have any support out there. So,
right.
We just have to find our own tribe and find our own way. And thankfully, your show is still on the air and, but I've seen many of my friends post things and it's wiped out, or saying fact check or something like that. So you have to do your own, like in everything, you got to do your own work.
Yeah. So, so do you think that people should be looking back at previous periods of epidemics to see what, because people say, oh, it's never going to be the same, like it's a bad thing. Like, I think we're going to see a lot more people working from home as a result of this, because employers are going, wow, we don't need all this office space. We were just as productive. Everybody worked from home. So we're going to see a lot more people working from home. So making a small investment in a home office doesn't have to be elaborate. It's probably a good idea right now, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, that's one of some of my clients that are doing really well are the ones that are supporting the transition to home office. I have a guy that does office sales, office furniture sales, and he can't. He's hiring people. He can't do. He can't keep up with it fast enough. So that's one of the ones that's sort of benefiting. Laptops, communication software. Everybody's heard about Zoom. So those kind of things have really done it. But I always say that Americans have a short memory. Anything when you think back to September 11th, and people say, "Oh, we're never going to be the same again," and 3 years later, we're the same again. And I think that's not all bad. To our benefit, we don't let crises and disasters and economic pandemics, bring us down. So I don't think that's all bad. But there will be some changes. I think more, like you said, more working at home. So there, some employers are going to want to get back to sort of more micromanaging their employees and want them in the office. And it's really hard for parents, to work from home. So all of that needs to be sorted out. So I do think there are going to be some things that are definitely going to be sticky, when we open back up. But I don't know that it's going to be as dramatic as, some people think. And I don't know that it's going to last forever, and
Right.
that isn't always a bad thing.
But I think working from home could be something like if you're already in position to work from home and you're applying for a new job, you could say, and look, I already have a home office. I have broadband. I have, a phone system. I can work because there's a local bank here in town that just recently switched to ATM for everything, but it's a human ATM. So when you go up and you enter your information, a human being at another location gets on and says, "What can we do for it?" All those people are working from home right now.
Right.
The ones that were able to keep the job, they happen to have something as simple as really good broadband. They needed that broadband, so they were like, "Okay, everybody who's got broadband, well, you're going to work from home. The rest of you, we'll have to figure out what to do with you later."
Yeah, and usually companies will provide, depending on the situation, but usually they're going to provide that, and even some of the tools where you run into trouble. Like I have one client that lives in a rural area, and every time they want to go online, they have to go in town to the coffee. So it's sort of like, and that person doesn't want to move. So I think that's sort of more an accessibility issue, that maybe that is something that's going to come to light of how important we have got to have 100% access,
Right.
across the country for everyone. But companies, in some situations, more, I guess, stable companies will provide some of those resources. But some companies, hey, if we can pick between two people and you already have the setup and we don't have to invest, you're going to come out ahead.
Absolutely. Patrick Rogers raises a good point. And we've been getting more and more of this discussion rising to the top. There's been this big emphasis on going to college.
Yeah.
And all the people who go to college, they do get something special. Employers look at your ability to finish college, even if your area of studies does not translate to the job. They look at you as somebody who finishes things.
Right.
So there is the value. But what is that value worth when you come out of college, $40,000 in the hole, like right out of college? So we're seeing a lot more people talking about trades, right? But back in the day when I was a kid, tradesmen jobs were looked at as like, they missed out in life. They're breaking their back. They're manual laborers. Today, they're healthier than the rest of us who sat at desks for the past 40 years, by the way.
Yeah.
But Patrick points out there are lots of jobs available on road and bridge construction where they will teach folks these trades. A lot of these folks have continued to work through this time. There is a shortage in this type of worker. And we need to somehow get out of the stigma of thinking, well, if you work with your hands and your back, you're somehow stupid. Because I know a girl who became a welder. She makes $200 an hour welding.
Yeah. I would hope that people don't have that stigma. And listen, I'm the first one, that feels if you have the inclination and can invest in getting your college degree, it's a gift that keeps on giving. Though the majority of people in the US don't have one. I mean, it's probably like 75, 78%. So the majority of the people don't. And you always hope, and this goes back to, we had an appreciation of more of our service workers, back in 2011, September 11, and then it sort of fades away. And now again, I mean, even like in our local community, they're applauding the food shelf staffers, So I think, I hope that there will be an appreciation. We need all types of workers and all types of things, and their jobs are a little bit more stable than, like doctors, like dermatologists. Technology is looking at and taking the place of, some of the surgeries, some of the pathology. Some of the doctors are a little nervous because AI and everything is coming in there. But, I think anybody that's had to have their air conditioning service or their toilet service has got to have a lot of appreciation for a tradesman. So I think there's absolutely nothing wrong, and people can have a very viable, happy career if they want to do that.
Where are some of the hidden gems of technology today? So like my son lives in California because that's where a lot of technology is. Are there other cities that are starting to beckon big tech to their cities so that they can start producing jobs in the tech area?
Well, Austin, is a big one. Austin, besides Silicon Valley and Research Triangle Park, in the Raleigh-Durham area, have, been hot spots that have done it. But what is interesting is sometimes it's more like a think tank or an area or a business sets up like a warehouse and starts bringing, incubators in. So it's not necessarily a city all the time. Sometimes it's just these pockets within
Mm.
cities, and again, you got to go and find your tribe, almost anywhere. I was talking to one client and it was somewhere in Ohio, just a really small town, but they had taken over like a warehouse, sort of like where they, how they have these artist lofts and they made them like incubators, and there were some great ideas and some businesses coming out of that. So, I definitely think, Silicon Valley and Austin and RTP and, are really, doing well, but you can sort of create, if you can find your tribe, you can create almost anywhere. But there is an advantage, especially to funding, venture capital funding, if you're in those areas where there are more opportunities and more people and, invested in it.
Yeah. And is it worth it for people to go back and look at what happened in previous pandemics, let's say, to see what jobs ended up becoming popular that weren't? Can we look back historically and learn anything that would help people move forward in their job choices?
I don't know so much because, the the world is so different. We didn't even
Mhm.
have, technology in, the Spanish flu. I mean, the thing I think what is not so much the focus on a particular job because we evolve so fast,
Mhm. Mhm.
with our technology and everything. It's more the process. Who were the ones that survived? Were they the healthier people, the more ambitious people, the ones that work harder, the ones that are going to invest in themselves or invest in continuing education or trades or whatever? I think that has been consistent. I don't know of any uh, economic crisis, where, even when the government hands out the opportunities, somebody has still got to be first in line and be the harder worker and capture that. But I think it's more of the process, that if you are willing to put in the work and um, I'll share a story of a client that I had back at the last downturn. And he was from Israel and he spoke Hebrew and he had his own business and it was floundering. So he wanted to go back to corporate America and he was really having, struggling. And he said, it's because I'm Hebrew and it's because I have an accent. Nobody's going to hire me, blah, 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 blah. And I thought it was his crappy resume, but he was convinced it was that. So I said, okay, so how much is that hurting you? Give me a percent. How much does somebody that's from America and speaks, standard English, how much of a benefit that you have? And he says, oh, they got at least 25% easier than me. I said, well, you know what you do? You do 130% of the work, and then you just overcame all those barriers that you feel that were against you. Just work harder.
Right.
If you're, think that's the case, go ahead and do it. I mean, he had a job in 2 weeks. So had to redo the resume. It was still, I think it was still more of that, but he was convinced in his head, had this, almost self-fulfilling prophecy. So I had to talk him off the ledge and then, give him the tools. But those are the people that are always going to thrive, are the ones that are healthy and are going to do the work. I mean, healthy physically and mentally, and are going to do the work. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I want to take a break, and when we come back, I want to talk about what are the things that people do that sabotage,
Mm-hmm.
and also what are the important things today if you're looking for a job that you need to
Sure.
brush up. Because I want to say this now. So August has worked with both my adult children, Taylor and Chase, and Chase is getting calls now, jobs that he would have never had opportunities to get calls for because of
Mm-hmm.
what August has done. Taylor is looking to change careers. I hope she doesn't. I really hope she stays in her career because she's so good at it. But
Great.
nonetheless, both of my children, I've just put them in touch with August. They paid her directly. They worked with her directly, and they are both thrilled with what has happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to. I want to put this in a way that people understand the spirit of it. You're not going to make omelets without breaking eggs. You are not going to change your outcome without taking some steps. And sometimes those steps cost a few dollars.
Mm-hmm.
But My son Chase, I was sitting right next to him yesterday. He got $165,000 a year offer, a job that he's going to go. He's actually going to interview for. And he said to me, they called him, and he said to me, this would have never happened if it wasn't for August. And August isn't representing. I said, well, did she send this company to you? He goes, no. He goes, the things that she did, when people go and look at my LinkedIn page and my resume, I'm immediately considered a candidate for the job.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk about what are the things that people do wrong right out of the gate when they're trying to present themselves. Yeah. All right, we're going to take a break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
We feel good.
Welcome back. We're talking with August Cohen. We're talking about career paths in troubled times, a story of movers and shakers, a term that was used when I was a young man, implying that there were people out there who had an energetic approach to life, and they didn't stand by and wait for things to happen to them. They made things happen. And that is true now, too. There are opportunities out there today because of what's going on. It's your job to see them. But once you see them, you have to present yourself in such a fashion where people go, I want that person on my team. Mm-hmm. And that is exactly what August specializes in. She
Mhm.
specializes in making you look better than you think you are. Isn't that the number one problem? Don't people not don't they're poor assessors of their own abilities and talents.
Yes, and they just go in and do their job. I hear this all the time. It's like I never thought of it that way. I just go in and do my job. I don't think I'm exceptional, no matter how high the level, because, and especially if they're really talented, the job's easy for them. They don't think it's anything special. It's like I just go in and do my job, and but to an outside person, it's like, wow, that's amazing. So yeah, they have a really hard time of understanding how to bring out their value. Most of the resumes that I look at, people just copy and paste their job description and stick it and plug it into the resume. And it's sort of like there's nothing about your unique value proposition, your brand, your achievements, and everybody, and that's what a lot of people do. So everybody else who's plopping in their job description, there's no way to distinguish you from anybody else. So that's it is very hard for people to self-reflect. And then, a lot of people don't want to brag. It's like, I don't want to brag. I was talking to a guy yesterday. He goes, I don't want to make it feel like I'm better than. He's a manager, and he's like, I want everybody to be equal. I don't want my employees to think I'm better than them. It's like, well, let's just talk about the facts. And sometimes you just got to take the emotion out of it and these feelings out of it, and to dig a little bit deeper. But that is what a lot of people struggle with. Yeah.
Yeah, we were joking just yesterday. Taylor was saying, like, when you read what August writes about you, you look at it and go, yeah, I guess that is me. Like, but it's, yeah, people are not, okay. There are some people that are just not great self-promoters.
Mhm.
And then there's people who don't really have the credentials, but they self-promote the heck out of themselves.
Yeah.
And you look at them, and because they believe in themselves so that they're so wonderful,
Mhm.
everybody else goes, oh, they must be wonderful, or they wouldn't be
Yeah.
saying that about themselves.
I'm into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So what are the biggest pitfalls that people make when they decide it's time for me to change careers, or I'm going to use this opportunity? There's companies that are going to be hiring. I'm going to springboard over where I was into a better position. What do they forget to do in order to present themselves properly?
Well, one thing is people all the time, and employees all the time, underestimate the value of LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the number one way that companies, hiring managers, recruiters source for new talent. So they really don't understand, how they have to leverage that, how they have to use it, leverage it. The number one way that people usually get jobs is through networking, and the new platform for networking is LinkedIn. It's really practically put recruitment software out of business. Many companies will only post their jobs on LinkedIn, or post it in their stream or post it in their group. So if you're not on LinkedIn, you're missing all these opportunities. So, before the pandemic, the majority of positions were not posted. They went to LinkedIn, or the hiring manager, the HR, the recruiter, or they requested their employees go out and help refer people in, because companies know that's the best way to find talent, and talent that will be retained. And often companies will even give a sign-on bonus, if you refer somebody in. So where do people go? They go to LinkedIn to look for this. So you got to understand how to optimize your profile and to be found.
So you do that as part of your services, right?
Yeah, I do. I do.
Now,
I think
you have people who just want, can you just fix my LinkedIn page, or do they want more than that typically?
the LinkedIn is based on the resume. So if you got a crappy resume, you're gonna have a crappy profile. It's not gonna excite anybody. So usually it's you really need to reflect on the resume and make sure that's optimized, and then you go and optimize your LinkedIn profile. Now, I do have clients that they have not everybody needs my services. So if their resume is strong, I'm not gonna try to get them to redo their resume. Then I can do their LinkedIn profile, or I can coach them on doing their LinkedIn profile, because I really like to give somebody the tools. If I do it, it'll be optimized and it'll be better. But if they have to understand all the nuances and the things under the hood and the different features that you can use to really optimize it.
How long does it take to take somebody? If someone reaches out to you, they can get to you. There's two ways people can reach August Cohen. You can go to her website, gethiredstayhired.com, or you can search for her, August Cohen, on LinkedIn. I also have the the URL. It's linkedin.com/IN/best resume writer / You can get right to her LinkedIn page that way. If somebody reached out to you today because of the show, they're like, I'm going to go for it. I really want to. I want to be one of the people that actually springboards from this dilemma. How long does it take for you to do what you need to do?
Well, I have sort of two programs. One is the White Glove, which Chase and Taylor did. That's a process that can take up to 6 weeks, and there's a lot of pre-work that I do. It's very intensive. It takes a long time. And those, to do the resume and the LinkedIn for that is, and that's usually all I recommend. I don't recommend cover letters, resume blasting services, biographies. My colleagues love selling them their additional revenue streams, but I only promote what's work and what works. And the resume and the LinkedIn profile, that white glove service is between $2,000 and $3,000. Now I have another service that's sort of like the mini version of that. I call it the Quick Career Boost, and that's between $375 and $995. Super fast turnaround, versus 4 to 6 weeks. It's 3 to 5 days, and they still get the high touch service. They still get to be interviewed to develop the information. And that has been, of course, in this time, extremely popular when people don't have the budget for that and they don't have the time to wait. Because my clients always say, August, you said be first in line, not last in line. So, you got to turn it around fast. So those are sort of like the two extremes of what I do. And also, I have on my website, on my LinkedIn page and on my website, because I'm really focused on LinkedIn now.
Right.
It's, a lot of free resources. I got articles, I got videos to tell you, different things you can do with your LinkedIn. So, people are welcome to go and do that. And I want to do some more this week, but there's definitely, some free resources out there too.
So Dave Rambat, I guess he just got here. He said, investing in home office setup is key to helping your performance stand out. A poor setup can drastically impact performance and could hinder raises or job retention. Companies invest in their office setup to get most production out of a worker, and you need to have the same mindset from your homework area.
Yeah.
And I do agree with that. And we were talking about that a little earlier, that I predict there's going to be a shift because a lot of companies are going right now. Like I got a buddy here, Brian, and he's been working from home, and he's part of a very, very large company called POS, and they do invoicing for physicians all over the country, and they all these sophisticated support things that they provide. Texting when your appointment is ready, and he's been working from home for 2 months. And I said to him, I said, Brian, do you think that you're going to come back to this office? He goes, we're talking about it. He goes, the owner's like, they've got offices for every salesperson in Ohio and Kentucky, all around. Like, just get people to work from home, and they're more productive, right? You don't have to drive to work. You don't have to drive home from work. Now, there are caveats to that. He's got 5 kids, and so that means he needs to have. And he does, he's got a big house. So he actually took a place and set it up. And everybody knows that when daddy's working, he's working, he's not there. But I think that we're going to start seeing more and more of employers asking. It may not be a prerequisite for the job, but it could be an extra feather in your cap if they say, do you have a good work from home environment? Yes. What do you got? Well, I've got this, I got that, I got broadband, I can do Skype and Zoom and blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. Like that may be something that's important in the future.
Well, I speak, especially if, like I said, if you're living in a rural area where you have all these barriers, that's going to be tough. So it's going to be interesting to see how that changes our demographics. And I concur with what David said. He said that really well earlier about, having a really quality home office and, presenting yourself as a professional and everything. But it is interesting. Yeah, I definitely think there's going to be more remote workers. It can be a cost savings for the company, which makes you wonder what's going to happen to all this real estate. All this real estate. I mean, there are some companies that have already shuttered their buildings, so we're never opening the building back up. So that's going to be sort of an interesting phenomenon. But I have been through this even in my own career before I started my own business. These phases, centralized, decentralized, open office space, closed office
Yeah,
space,
right.
work from home, don't work from home. So, and they seem to always go back from wanting you to come into the office because they want to micromanage you. Now, maybe this will be different because this is a health issue, and they don't want the liability or, the cost involved with sterilizing these environments, because they're probably going to think they have to do it forever now. So that's an interesting factor. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns, but yeah, I definitely concur. There's going to be more people working from home. Will it last forever? I mean, it's so much better for the environment, for time, but it is a challenge for some people, and some people don't like it, and some managers do want to micromanage you a little bit more. So I think it's going to level itself out, to the side of more people being comfortable and more companies being comfortable than it was before. But I don't know if it's going to be at this extreme, and it's going to be real interesting to see what the real estate market happens.
And we were talking about that just recently. A buddy of mine and I were talking. There's going to be a lot of office space that's just not going to be rented out, and they're going to have to do something with that office space, something else.
I have a client that does like temporary space, sort of like an e-work. He doesn't work for e-work, but it's a similar kind of thing. And they're really, they're getting interest. They're not like knocking it out of the park, but they're doing, they're really expanding it from the model of, business. Sometimes you do have to have people meet in the same thing. You have an employee that's traveling to home office, and if there's no home office, where are you going to meet? So they're doing this sort of, co-working and these temporary short-term office spaces, which and they're getting a lot of interest. And so, they're just getting ready. A lot of the companies just getting ready to pull the trigger on that to set that up because it's more cost effective to only hire the office when you need it, and if you need 20 rooms because you have the sales team coming in, or if you only have 2 because you're doing a performance review, so that's really interesting. So hopefully maybe some of this empty space can be repurposed.
Yeah. They're going to have to find something to do with it because it's just not going to sit out there. I mean, we got the downstream effects of that office space as mortgages, and those mortgages are involved in investment portfolios. And I mean, it's just, something's going to have to happen.
Yeah. And I was going to say, you don't want to underestimate too the social aspects of it. Many people, they really miss, they love their kids, they love their family, but it's a little bit too much love, and they love the being able to be around other adults and talk and not have the distraction and the excitement in the environment, especially people like me that are extroverts. We get our energy from other people.
Right.
We want to be out there. So I think and that's why, and I think you've touched on this in your show, always a concern of things during this time is suicide and depression and things like that, that I think, I don't think we're ever just going to have everybody working at home. There's going to still be some people that love that human connection and want to get in, want to be around other people.
No, you're right. You're right.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. Yeah, people love, that's why coffee shops have become so popular. People set their laptops up there and sit and work because they're tired of sitting at home and working. They want to be out with other people.
Right.
And so, no, you're absolutely right. That's an aspect that I really didn't consider, because I was about to say to you, well, we have software now that monitors, you check in, it keystrokes.
Yeah.
Everything. I mean, I have quite a few people who work for me that have worked for me for years. Like Michael Quantico lives in the Philippines. He's worked for me for 10 years, but I work with him through Upwork, which is an outsourcing website. And, and I don't even look at his diaries anymore because he's worked for me for so long that he's
what he does.
Beyond trustworthy. But when I hire somebody new, I go and look. I'm like, wow, they billed me for an hour and a half, and the keystrokes were like, 10 every 10 minutes. Like, what were they doing? They just open the window up and keep it alive once in a while, and then I'll question, like, what were you doing at that time? So we have ways for the micromanagers to still micromanage you from home. But I do think that people will forever want to go to work, especially when you're young, right? Out of college, you can't wait to get into the workplace, go out to dinner after with friends and be part of that whole. Yeah. That's probably one of the reasons that we will not go exclusively to work from home situations.
Yeah.
All right, let's take this last commercial. I'm sorry, did I step on you?
No, I was going to say, and collaboration usually is still easier live, even though you can do it on Zoom or whatever.
Virtual,
it's not the same thing. It's just not the same, but
No, you're right. We're going to take our last commercial break. When we come back, we'll wrap up the interview. We've got a couple more questions, but this is the time, folks. If you feel like, oh my God, what's going to happen to me because of the current state of the economy. Believe me, the economy is going to come back. It always
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
But where will you be when it comes back? Will you be sitting there waiting for an old job to reopen and hoping that your unemployment doesn't run out? Or are you going to jump to the front of the line? I love that. I love that, August. You want to be on the front of the line, not the back of the line, because people are going to start getting hired again real soon.
Mm-hmm.
Real soon. So now is the time to look at your resume, look at your LinkedIn page, reach out to August. You can go to her website, gethiredstayhired.com, or you can go to her LinkedIn page, just search for August Cohen, Cohen. And also her LinkedIn page is linkedin.com/best resume writer / and let her take a look at your stuff and make some suggestions, because this literally right now, while everybody is kvetching and worried about what's going to happen in their lives, this could actually be the door, the embarkation point for you leading your best life ever. But you just got to see it that way. That's the first step.
Yeah.
All right, stay tuned. We'll be right back with more.
reps with the weight of the world.
Welcome back. We're talking with August Cohen. She's helped a lot of people step up their game and find paths to new careers. And you got to do this stuff if you expect to see change. If you just keep doing the same stuff over and over again, you're not going to see any change. And there are opportunities out there right now. I guarantee you there are opportunities out there right now. But you have to prepare yourself to be approached, and you have to look like someone they want to approach. And the only way you could do that is to turn to somebody like August to do this for you, because I know we talked about this before the show. I am a horrible self-promoter. Like, I don't promote myself at all. I don't write books. I don't go on other people's shows. I don't do any of that. So, and the reason is because when I think about it, I think to myself, I'm just this guy who hosts this podcast. Like, I'm not, but the reality is that I have peers out there that probably are the same quality as I am, but they are out there promoting themselves and lecturing and stuff like that. So I am a living proof of what not self-promotion does for you. I'm 14 years in this behind this microphone, and there are so many people who just launched podcasts 3 years ago who have much bigger audiences than I do, because they're just better at self-promoting. You need somebody like August who will do it for you.
Well, that's really sweet, Carl. But I'd like to give the listener some concrete tips that they can use and take away, because like I said, not everybody needs to come to, resume writer, career coach. And one thing, as far as your resume, do not put your picture on the resume. They have template services out there that create resumes, and I encourage you not to use a template. It doesn't go through the applicant tracking system well. It's not in the format that the audience likes to see the info, but a lot of them allow you to put up a picture, and that is a definite no-no in America. In other countries, it's not so bad, but here, that's usually an automatic toss. So don't put your, picture on the resume. Don't put the reason that you're leaving or that you left in your resume. I see that sometimes people have a line, reason for leaving. If you need to discuss that, you can discuss that in the interview. Just, taking up space. You don't need to go back to the beginning of time, to that lemonade stand out of, high school, on your resume, particularly in technology, 8 to 10 years. Your C level, 8 to 12, maybe 15, it depends. But in each one, that you go back, it's a little bit less info. And again, particularly in technology, some people will, have outdated technologies on their resume. Every technology they ever had, just only, what is relevant to your
Lotus 1, 2, 3. I know.
Yeah. But I see all kinds of stuff on there. I actually have an article on my website. It's got like about 17,000 views now, and it's like, great CIO, CTO resumes go beyond technology, so people can check that out there in the tech field. But you don't need to go back to the beginning of time. You can have a little early career section. Recruiters are the ones that usually want to know how many jobs you had and how back, because they're trying to figure out your age. So we don't need to spoon feed them that information. Just go back, depending, 8 to 15 years with some detail depending on what level you are. And then just do an early career section and don't put down the dates, just put the company in the title. You don't have to put, references available by request. Companies know that. You're not going to refuse them. So you don't have to point that out. You're just wasting space. The resume is very valuable real estate. And so you do want to make sure that you focus more on your current role. It's from an employer standpoint, it's, all about what you've done lately. So you really want to highlight that. And if you have just copied and pasted your job description, you definitely need to go back and do more. But think of things in CAR formats: challenge, action, result. What was the challenge? What was the action you took? And what was the result? Or situation, action, result, problem, action, result, any way that you want to do it. But sometimes that gets people out of just being frozen in their day-to-day activities, to look at it that way, to bring out something and numbers and percents and, sales increase, profit increase, costs that you saved, labor hours you saved, all that kind of stuff is, metrics sort of prove the claim. If you're claiming this, if you have metrics about it. So if you're employed now, And even if you're going to look or not, start recording that data. I have salespeople that come to me and it's like, you don't even know your sales numbers. That's like the lifeblood of a salesperson. They just don't, because they don't think about it. They just do their job. They don't think they
Right.
ever do. But the sales numbers are, any kind of number is sexy on the resume. So you definitely want that on there. We don't use objectives anymore, where they say, I want a job, with a challenge. But employers don't care what you want. It's what they want,
Right.
and,
Right.
and so it's like, tell them, in the summary statement, what you have and why they need to hire you, to get to meet their goals, not what you want. So that's sort of like an outdated thing that I will still see on a resume. A lot of people think, oh, have to have a one-page resume. I've done over 1,500 resumes, and 80% of them are 3 pages, and the rest are usually 2 pages. I've done 3-page resumes for people who just got out of college. So what I tell my clients, if you don't have the first page be compelling, if it's a 1-page resume, they're not even going to get through the 1 page.
Yeah.
If you have 3 pages and you can really grab them in that top half of the first page, then they pull you out of the pile and you're a candidate, and then they want to know everything that you've done. So don't get hung up on that. But like I said, we don't need to go to 3 pages just so you could have, 40 years of job, history on there. So, so those are a couple of tips, for your resume. Do it in Word format. Don't use tables and columns and things like that, like the templates do. You can always save it and send it in PDF. That's the best format to save it. But start with a Word document, for your resume. And then for LinkedIn, just make sure your profile is optimized. You can map a lot of the information from your resume over to your LinkedIn profile, but be aware the resume's the truth, but the truth isn't always appropriate for the public space. I have really high profile clients that they're planning, they're preparing to shut down a division, and the media follows their profile, the journalists looking for nuggets. So you have to make sure that your what you put on your LinkedIn profiles for the appropriate for the public space. So you have to
Right.
tone it down, especially numbers or client names, things like that can be confidential. And then also do not put your resume on LinkedIn. Your LinkedIn profile will have enough to intrigue anybody that's interested in it. But if you put your resume in there, a recruiter can put it to pad their database, and then it can send it out without your permission. The coworker that's sat next to you likes your resume better than his. And I'll just take, her resume and put my name on it. So you definitely don't want to post it on LinkedIn. Like I said, LinkedIn gives you plenty of space and even more areas than a resume can to sort of describe your value and what you do, and do all of that. So there's a couple of, quick tips, hopefully that will help the audience.
But I got to tell you, the greatest value is someone else looking at your life and your career path and writing that story for you. I've learned this in my life. You're never going to really make yourself sound as good as you are. Only someone else can do that for you, unless you are, unless you're a shameless narcissist, right?
Promoter.
I saved the world in my last job, and but the reality is very few of us are shameless narcissists, and most of us are humble. We've been taught by our parents to not brag, and this is the time that your parents were wrong. You have to brag, and you can't be humble. And really, I find that letting someone else do that, because you're not going to lie about them, but you're going to make them sound as best as it can be, without skirting the truth.
Well, what I tell my clients, it's not bragging, it's facts. If we develop the facts of the situation, it's a fact. It's not bragging and whatever. And also, my model is sort of unique in the industry in that I interview clients. I interview the information. 20% of my work is redoing other writers' work. And most resume writers use a questionnaire, and often they'll farm that questionnaire out to subcontractors. There's thousands and thousands in the industry. They contact me all the time, but I craft all my own projects. But I think that interview, because you could even ask them a question on writing, like write a car statement. They can't think of anything, where I, will not let them off the hook that easy. I'm going to keep, prodding and do the Vulcan mind meld, to make sure that get all the info, for them. But like I said, there's, a lot of free resources out there. I mean, there's a lot of misinformation, so you have to be careful of what you follow. There's an organization I'm a member of called the National Resume Writers Association. And usually folks that are in that, follow, we've done a lot of research on how employers want to see the resume, how they want to be contacted, how they want stuff. And most people in there are fairly trained and educated. I actually used to serve on the certification committee to certify resume writers. I've had awards for my resumes. I've actually served as a judge on award committees. So I really like that if job seekers can go to the National Resume Writers Association, they have a search field in there, with different criteria. I feel comfortable that they're getting someone with at least some minimal training. And there's even, you can look by a certified writer. So that's another resource that they can use. And all kinds of price points. Yeah.
Well, the place to start is to either go to gethiredstayhired.com or linkedin.com/in/best resume writer / reach out to August. Let her do it for you. Because I'm being sincere, right? I know. I bought a pressure washer, right? But it was a cheap one, so it's like 1,500 psi, and it's really good for doing stuff like the deck, my motorcycle, the car tires, but it's not really good for doing the concrete. And I could spend an entire weekend out there trying to make it work, or I can hire a guy for $400 to come in and do the whole thing and be done with it. Yeah. It's like there's times where you have to turn to other people, and your career is one of them, because careers are what you build your life upon. Like if you're not willing to invest in your career, okay, someone didn't teach you the important values of life here, like you got to spend a couple bucks. Tootie used to say, Tootie's was a bar in Brooklyn that Jackie Gleason used to bartend at. And Tootie was still alive when I was a young man. And whenever we would come in there, the young guys, we would buy one 25-cent beer. We'd sit there all night and nurse that one beer. Because we were kids. We weren't even supposed to be in there. I think I was like 17. And Tootie would come by and go, for crying out loud, spend a buck. Like, come on. But no, really, you got to spend money on certain things. And I humbly feel that having a professional work with you for something so important as your career is not being foolish. It's not. Well,
thank you, Carl. Thank you.
And thank you for being a loyal fan of this show for so many years.
No, I know, since 2012. And, thank you for all you do, to try to open our minds and be healthy out here and think of things in different ways. And even you and I don't 100% agree on things, but we can have a civil conversation around it. And I'm glad that you as a resource, and you're free, and that's why I encourage everybody to support Carl like I do. I just got some Piedmontese, steak, to support the suppliers. I bought like every supplement and everything that you've ever had, and not all of them work, and some of them work great,
Right,
but yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much for your loyalty and your friendship. Thank you. Yeah. And that's it for today. Tomorrow is Thursday, so we have a Renew Life RX show. It'll be something fascinating because I'm going to look for a good study to talk about tonight. And then Friday I'm off the air, but we have some really, really exciting shows. Plus, for those of you who were paying attention last week, when I talked about a specific peptide to get rid of GERD, and I talked about gastric prokinetic effects of GHRP6. Well, we have a guy coming on the show next week who followed the advice, and for the first time in the past year, he's been to see specialists. They've talked about surgeries. He can't hold down a single meal. Every meal he eats, within 2 to 3 hours, he ends up throwing it back up. I just got a message from him. Every meal he's had since using GHRP6 20 minutes before the meal has not come back up. He feels like his life has been given back to him again. So this is a very unknown treatment for GERD that only I am talking about in the whole world right now. And we have well, it's the truth. I'm patting myself. Wait, let me see. But people are doing it, and they're like, "Oh my God, Carl, you've cured me."
Well, and that's what I was curious, so, I'll throw the first question out there. Is this a cure? So do they have to do it every time before they eat, or at some point does it heal the gut and they're done? As long as
I don't know that yet. So here's the bottom line. Something is causing digestive motility to go awry in our population today.
Mhm.
Many people will tell you that, oh, if I eat certain foods, it bloats me and it sits in my stomach. Other people will tell you, like, I'm burping up the taste of the food I ate 4 hours ago. In more extreme cases, you have people literally their body wants to purge because that food is just not moving like it's supposed to.
Yeah.
And all these people end up with GERD. They all talk about, oh, my food comes back up, I burp it back up. So by using a gastric prokinetic like GHRP6, which has virtually no negative effects whatsoever, other than it will increase hunger if you use too much. Every time, 20 minutes before every meal, I have a funny feeling that over the course of time, that the peristalsis will reestablish its rhythmicity, and you may not need it all the time. I have a feeling, but I keep coming back to the vagal nerve. I keep coming back to leaky gut. I keep coming back to coffee. I keep coming back to RF. I look at the things that, like, when you start to look at people who train hard, who get to sleep early, versus people who eat crap, don't train, they're up all night, and we all have this same problem going on with our gut. When you try to look at the lowest common denominator, there's only a handful of things that we all do. We all do, regardless of lifestyle, economic conditions, so on. And I think that it's causing us a lot of GI problems, and that GI problem is actually rooted in slow gastric motility, which also, by the way, leads to SIBO.
Yeah.
Like, if your food doesn't move fast, you end up getting small intestinal bacterial overgrowth.
But has he tried different diets? Has he only
Yes,
tried?
he tried. I even had him stop all caffeine, didn't do anything. He's tried carnivore. He went strict carnivore. In fact, I think he still is pretty strict carnivore right now. It doesn't matter what he eats. Within 3 hours, he has to go and throw it up. And the doctors, he's been scoped. They first said he was a candidate for the surgery. They do that esophageal sphincter surgery.
Mm-hmm.
Then they said he's not a candidate because something else is going on here.
Has he ever tried Botox? Botox to I don't know if it's to the finger, because years ago there was a psychologist that worked with is it the bulimics that throw up, the ones that throw up after they eat, and she would work with them. They didn't want to be bulimic anymore. They started eating, but they would continue to throw up, and so they were so frustrated because, like, the therapist didn't believe them, and they would go to her and swear, I did not, but that muscle or whatever is so trained. So she used Botox to calm that down, and that was just like, it worked. And then after time, they didn't need to do it because their body was retrained to not have that response. And I had actually recommended to a neighbor who had a child that had a lot of health issues when the baby was born, and so had to have a feeding tube and all this stuff. And then when it got to the point that they could have real food, they couldn't do it. They couldn't. They had aversion, to eating, and the same thing helped with them. So I wonder if that would.
Well, what Botox would do is it would stop the esophageal sphincter from just opening.
Mm-hmm.
But if your food isn't moving, that could be a disaster. Right. I mean, because if you can't vomit, if you try to vomit and the esophageal sphincter won't open, now you've got this undigested food. It can't go down. It can't go up. Now you're in trouble.
Well, it would be a problem with those bulimics, that she didn't describe. Yes. And then we had this whole other issue because, it's out of my, above my pay grade, but, there's probably some whole chain from the brain all the way down. And if that's the initiator, then everything else is following suit. But if that's not happening, maybe the rest of the stuff won't happen.
So we have the new service we use for our videos. They have privacy, which my other company didn't, and we found this out. So depending on your privacy setting on Facebook, your name may or may not appear. So someone posted this. Maybe it balances serotonin production, serotonin over or under production linked to nausea and gastric issues. Definitely, that's not his problem. It's not, because because food isn't moving at all, and GHRP6 is not increasing serotonin. It's basically shutting off somatostatin. Number one is what it's doing, but it also is a ghrelin. It's a synthetic ghrelin. So when you're hungry, when you're really hungry, the gut not only wants food, but it's going to process it fast so you can keep eating until it's not hungry anymore. So what this does, a gastric prokinetic makes you hungry and makes the stomach go, we're here, we're going to do this job, just send us the food. And it moves the food out of the stomach faster and into the small intestine faster. It does not affect the large intestine or the colon. It just gets the food into the small intestine faster. And that seems to be the problem with some people. Their gut isn't pushing the food down into the small intestine. It's just lingering in the stomach. They feel it. They're bloated. They cramp. They don't understand. They hate eating. And in the severe cases, they literally have to vomit the food back up because it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, and then
That's
you
not
set
serotonin.
that pattern. You set that whole pattern, and even if you try to do something, like those bulimics, that the system is already primed to throw up the food or whatever. So
yes.
You can calm one thing, but I'll be curious. So he has been using it, and it works?
He's been messaging me every single day.
Yeah.
And I said, will you come on the show? And he said, absolutely. And so this morning, this is what he messaged me. He said, every meal, every shake has stayed down today. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
Every meal, every shake. Now, before, that wasn't the case. Every meal, every shake, he ended up vomiting back up.
Of course, when I hear like every meal and every shake, I'm like, I'm wondering what he's eating, but
no. He's a bodybuilder. He's a competitive bodybuilder. I don't want to say his name until he comes on the show.
Okay. Yeah.
But he owns a gym and he's a personal trainer and he knows his stuff.
Yeah, and when you have that happen, then you have you get a fear aversion, to even.
You don't want to eat.
Yeah, that doesn't even help. And if this, by affecting the ghrelin hormone, that sends some different signals, maybe that could help too. So.
Years ago, I said, probably 10 years ago, maybe longer, because I've been using GHRP6 for as long as I've been doing the show.
Really? I mean, you have issues with GERD or something?
No. So you take growth hormone releasing hormone and GHRP6 together, and it causes a pulse of growth hormone.
Okay.
So I would use that on and off instead of using growth hormone.
Mm-hmm.
But I also used GHRP6 when I was bulking because I wanted to eat a lot more food. So GHRP6 makes you hungry.
Mm-hmm.
If you take 250 micrograms of GHRP6, you have to be careful not to eat your fingers. I'm not joking. And I always said, even back then, I said, this would be an amazing drug for elderly people because elderly people lose their appetite. Food doesn't move through them quick anymore. They'll eat 1 or 2 meals and then they slowly just waste. Their bones get thinner, their muscles disappear. And if we just gave elderly people 125 to 150 micrograms of GHRP6 before they're supposed to eat, they would eat everything in front of them and they would be robust because we all know that having a strong appetite is a sign of aging better. Because people have strong appetites. Like my father, he had a strong appetite his whole life until 2 weeks before he died. He stopped eating.
Yeah.
He just stopped eating. We couldn't get him to eat anything.
Yeah. Now, do you think, though, you've referenced food needs to go through you fast, and I sort of thought food doesn't need to go through you fast, because it needs to absorb the nutrients, and that's why vegetarians or vegans or people that are eating fiber to get things to move through, and carnivores, they only have to go to the bathroom maybe every 3 or 4 days.
But ghrelin increases the production. The machinery works faster. It's not that it pushes it through you fast. It's that you digest food like you did when you were young. You get everything out of the food. It's not like as though you're going to end up with a nutrient deficiency by using a ghrelin, a synthetic ghrelin like this. Your digestive system works like it used to, and everything goes through you the way it's supposed to. Like if you were famished, if you were hungry, because your body wants another meal now. It's like, I'm not done eating yet, so we have to eat more. That's why finding the right dose is critical. The dose that you take has to be enough to stimulate peristalsis, but not enough to make you famished where all you want to do is eat for the next hour.
Right. Wow. Very interesting.
Yeah. And I discovered this on my own. Like you know what it is? People reach out to me all the time and they say, I have this problem.
Yeah.
And then let me think about it. And I'm not really sitting there thinking about it. But then all of a sudden, like in the back of my mind, the hard drive is still running. And it's like, I wonder if ghrelin has an effect on motility. And it does. And then once I found the first study, I found the other study. And then I found the study where they actually gave GHRP6 to diabetic mice, because diabetic people have very, very slow gastric emptying. They're very, very slow. And sure enough, in the mice, they gave them the equivalent of about 200 micrograms to a human being. And the food was processed quickly, and they became healthy, and they looked good, and I mean, and they all had GERD before that.
Yeah.
They all had, so it's something that I just got lucky, because I started thinking down these lines. Like, I know ghrelin makes you hungry. I wonder if it also affects digestion.
Yeah, I've always, we've commented on this before. Like, I think you have like a photographic memory. Like when you're interviewing someone, you'll go and you're talking to about whatever, and then all of a sudden, randomly, you say, "Yeah, I was talking to Dr. So and so in 2008, and he referenced this study," and I'm like, "What?" I remember, the info from the day before, and I'm like, "What?" You just pull this out all the time. You do that, like
my memory is memory is my stock in trade, and I remember things from when I was a baby.
Yeah,
I remember my mother, me telling my mother, I remember climbing out of the crib that day, and you and Valerie taking me back to the crib. And she said, "I can't believe you remember that. Like, we never talked about it. It's not like I overheard it and I synthesized it into a memory." But I've been blessed with a big head and a lot of storage space. A lot of storage space.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for being here today. This is good stuff. And I hope if we help one person in the audience get on to being living the best life they can during these tough times, then we did our job.
Keep it employed, or getting them, employed fast. So hopefully it was helpful, and thank you for all you do, and we'll see each other around Facebook.
That's it. Take care. And we'll see everybody tomorrow with more Superhuman Radio. Thank you for watching and listening today.